At first, I wasn't really sure if I was going to make a video about either Air Riders lore or Starcross World lore, because both of these games have pretty straightforward stories for Kirby standards. But as I kept looking into Air Ride's content, I kept seeing more weird details that just have to be addressed, and I'll just tag Starcross along with it. So, Starcross World is odd because it can start at any point in the story, but the ending can only be activated after beating the final boss and getting Elfilin back. Despite this, the lore goes that there's a cycle of time that when passes, a meteor will land on Earth and sink entire continents. This continental sinking is probably the reason why humans had to leave due to overpopulation. We witness what was going to be the last cycle, sinking the last continent, but the sheer will of the starries that seal it knocked it off course, and it shattered, spreading the crystals, transforming the world, and a volcano rose from the ground where it landed. The starries are mysterious children who became crystals to seal away great danger. One of which was likely Galactonite, who, I can't stress this enough, only has one line of text implying this, which isn't present in the translation. Speaking of Galactonite and the volcano, these two areas are undoubtedly similar, and Hal has gone on record about how there's something about his battle arenas that has important lore that we need to look at. At the moment, my best guess is when the Starry's seal broke, it formed around the volcano. And when Nova broke Galacta's seal, it formed into the planet you fight on, hence why the structures of both of them look the same. Anyway, Kirby finds the meteor with its starry seal broken, and a Waddle Dee who is as into lore as we are, and of course he tells us the meteor is gonna destroy everything if we don't do anything. So Kirby sets out to save all the starries and reseal the meteor, but of course, the entity within breaks free and absorbs the starries, who is revealed to be an older brother of Elphilis, who I'm just gonna call Meteon because Kirby falls into a chasm, and underneath the volcano are many prototypes of the ship that the humans left Earth with, which is practically confirmed to be the lore Starcutter. Unlike most villains which cause chaos at random, Meteon specifically made his meteor fall, sensing Elfilin's invasion was a failure. You're 30 years too late, buddy. But also, as Kirby saved the Starries and killed its sibling, Meteon grew a hatred specifically against Kirby, manifesting the Galactals to stop him. Before defeat, Meteon gives us one last reminder that Fectos are absolutely nil life forms, and we also get another misdirection. This crystal looks identical to Galactonite's seal, but again, this is because of the Starries. Apparently, the Fectos' weapons are formed on what they absorb, and the spear Meteon formed gave him the power of the Starries, so he could form their crystal seal around himself. Meteon is defeated and resealed, but the spear is left behind. Then we find the portal to the Ultimate Cup Z has now been supercharged by meteor power. We should just assume that the original Cup Z has now been replaced and this is the canon one now. There are two important music choices during the bosses that imply big revelations. During Forgo Leon, it plays the Magalor epilogue theme. In case you didn't think it was specific enough, for Phase 2, it plays the even stronger variant of this same theme. Unfortunately, due to it being associated with another dimension and it being the nexus point of the Kirby multiverse, it's not clear what exactly is being implied by this connection. Morpho uses Void's theme, which might finally answer the question of who came first, Void or the God forces. And I guess the answer is Void, because the butterflies are the ones that run the underworld, so if they are made of Void, then most likely even the structured or otherworldly systems came after. Since Chaos Elphilis' existence is a last-ditch effort to defeat Kirby, obviously this only happens one time, so this is the canon version. Nichel is the only confirmed human and the singer behind the main theme. It's revealed she was given a prophetic dream that helped her have a breakthrough on understanding the meteor prophecy, so she wrote a song about it. This is the song that plays in the credits of Starcross World, and I'd like to point out this particular verse. And in case this wasn't clear enough, the Japanese version has the line, "Whose birthday?" a clear reference to Highness's rant about Void. So the original meteor was probably Void, and the English line pretty much confirms the positive reincarnation theory. As if that wasn't obvious enough. The main theme in all of Wandaria is confirmed to have been made to make humans comfortable with the idea of space travel and meeting extraterrestrial life, which confirms that originally on the Forgotten Land it was just humans. There was no other intelligent race that worked alongside them before leaving Earth, unless of course they made one. The Star Prophecy song debuted on the day they left Earth, but Nichelle herself, oh my gosh, I'm saying Nichelle again, but Nichelle herself actually stayed behind. Elfilin tells us that back when he was still a part of Elfilis traveling the galaxy, he heard a certain singer's voice, and that maybe be what led them to target Earth in the first place. We know that the lore moves across time and space, and they were blaring this song as they traveled, so it's possible it even reached into the past, which means we have our first confirmed time paradox in the Kirby franchise. Finally, at the very end, we unlock a secret unfinished song from Nichelle, a song made from her last moments on Earth. There's a very strong implication from this song that somehow Nichelle's mind became the AI of the lore, and at very least the lore came back to pick her up for some reason. There's no concrete answer to which is true, and it really doesn't matter. Nichelle is symbolically the lore either way. She is the reason Elfilis made its way here, and the reason they cracked the truth of the meteor, the hope for the future. She is the guiding ship that helped humans lead Earth. That's the end of Starcross World. Now for Air Riders. I'm not doing a plot synopsis since it's the most straightforward Kirby story ever with full narration. Just watch the cutscenes. Everyone having copy abilities is never addressed, so it's probably only for gameplay and does not exist within the lore. So Zora has essentially no confirmed lore, but it's pretty clear it has crystals from another dimension or the Starries or whatnot. And this is backed up with some imagery shown later. We don't know when Zora first landed. It could have been one of the earliest points in the timeline. There's no frame of reference since it happens in a remote location. The name Zora comes from a biblical city that means something akin to light or dawn. Obviously this could simply refer to the dawn of the Riders, but it being an artificial being floating through space for no discernible reason, Zora had to be made for some reason. And with the blue color and crystals, I can only imagine someone was trying to artificially fulfill the meteor prophecy. Why it went to Popstar, I have no idea. Perhaps it's a universal prophecy on all planets, but there's nothing to suggest that. But even stranger is what's inside Zora. We see this little orb that when ripped out kind of looks like an eye. It has a tiny dark spirit inside with blue light. This is the true consciousness of Zora, but remember, this being is purely artificial, so it's not dark matter, or any other darkness we know. But it could be an attempt to recreate one. And out of them, dark matter is the only one to be depicted with a blue eye, even if it's only one time in a subgame. Gooey is also blue, so most likely this is artificial dark matter. But it's not a direct attempt to clone dark matter like the one Haltman made, more of something adjacent to dark matter, one that doesn't appear to have any malicious will. Perhaps that's what they were trying to create? Regardless, Zora, after being removed, takes the form of Dedede for no given reason. Now, theoretically, we don't know it's specifically our Dedede. Dedede could just be a common last name among his race, which actually has some evidence as the D3 in HRD3 is obviously a stand-in for Dedede, and we don't know any direct connection between HRD3 and our king. So all of this paints the picture that the Dedede clan were both a part of the Science Ancients and the Magic Ancients who worshipped dark matter. And this checks out with the murals in the Great Cave Offensive, depicting a Dedede-ish figure with one eye, and what looks like Zero too. Anyway, moving on to the game itself, these little intermission character scenes give us quite a lot. But due to the fact that there's no canon route, it's all just kind of there. And I feel that's by design. They're more of a showcase of what characters populate Popstar and what they're capable of, if not an exaggeration of those capabilities. On top of that, the enemies we fight in Road Trip just kind of zap into existence, so it's not impossible that even these guys could be mere fabrications. But that still means they have to exist somewhere. So most importantly, Eline's mere presence confirms that Kirby and the Rainbow Curse is most likely canon, and not an alternate universe like I've said in the past. It's still weird, the rolling and no copy ability despite there being no curse makes no sense, and Bandana D being able to hit Grab Hand but Kirby not being able to feels like a blatant contradiction of their power. And usually you chalk something like that up to gameplay, but the game, for some reason, made sure to tell us this is diegetic. And if Rainbow Curse Kirby is the same Kirby, I guess that makes Dark Crafter the strongest Kirby villain, because he was at very least able to freeze Kirby in a way where an external force was needed to help, and quite possibly killed him briefly. It also raises question on the essence of art magic in Kirby. We've always known magic paint and crayon can briefly bring things to life, but this implies that art and color is life itself if this isn't a alternate universe made of clay. That aside, all these scenes have an underlying theme of climate change. Almost every character you choose drastically changes the environment, and that's why your route changes. Of course, not all of them do, some of them simply lead you towards an area of that theme. Some annoying people will probably use these scenes to power scale these characters based on who defeats who, and cause mass environmental destruction. But let's not forget, by guest star, theoretically anyone from Magolor to Broomhatter is strong enough to beat Morpho Knight. But again, it's more about the potential rather than a proper statement. Moving on, there's some characters that are dubious if they should even be here. And while anyone can be the protagonist of Road Trip, Kirby is still included, so these characters' relationship with Kirby still needs to be taken into account for how these characters should be reacting. King Gollum should be in the Mirror World. Sure, we've seen Shadow Kirby leave the Mirror World, but we've severely underestimated the size of this man. Some stages in Air Riders have golems, and we see they're actually way bigger than we thought. And if you scale the king with them based on how they appeared before, it's no wonder he's a literal fortress. No idea how this man was fitting through any mirror portal. There's this hand that appears in one level of mass attack now on your side, when before the only thing it did was try to destroy you and a building. It's made of whatever darkness Necrotius has, and I guess if dark matter can be good, so can any other darkness. Also, according to the Spriter's resource, this thing is called Golem Hand, so is it related to King Golem somehow? I have no idea. Both Drasha and Pyribbit were at odds with Kirby and presumably died in Triple Deluxe. Now you might say, unless it's constantly affirmed a character is dead, there aren't any true deaths in Kirby. But in this very mode, we see 3 to 4 pretty clear deaths. Kappa is the least likely since Kappa can swim, but the animation here sure makes it look like he goes unconscious. Lovely gets obliterated no matter what your choice. Ice Blucko straight up kills itself, and in a neutral ending, Zora dies presumably. But the most legit death is when Smear kills Mr. Bright. We see the sun go out and it turn to nighttime, and the next level is also in nighttime, showing you really did just kill the sun. Also, this is the first time Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright have even been implied to be the actual sun and moon of Popstar, rather than merely sun and moon looking creatures. So, going back to the Starry Crystal stuff, there are 4 scenes that involve similar crystals, one being explicitly the crystals from another dimension. There's these completely unexplained tree arms that throw very similar looking crystals, and I cannot stress enough how these brand new enemies go completely unacknowledged. It's not the exact same crystal graphic, but come on. No, maybe it's just a different graphic because they're smaller here. The question is, how and why are these things related? There's also the Crystal Shard. Now back in 64, the shards made star portals, but here they specifically chose to have them create a crystal pathway just like the flowers in Starcross World. And the color scheme is the exact same as the previous 2 crystals. So these crystals being related to the Starries was something that was already highly theorized, but this pretty much confirms it. Then there's this whole area covered in gems later on. I'm less sure on the connection here since they don't seem to use any of the same colors, but regardless, these crystals clearly have their own hostile will, and that is something that needs questioning in of itself. Now finally, we have a few scenes with significance to Kirby Right Back At Ya. First, another new character, which appears to be a Cappy variant who sprouts a mushroom path from the ground. You might think this is a contradiction as the Cappies aren't shown to be mushrooms in Kirby Right Back At Ya, but Cappies were never actually mushrooms. They're based on Haniwa clay figures, and descriptions in Smash Bros. Also state that Cappies aren't actually mushrooms. So the hat is somehow granting the power to create this path. Next is the biggest piece of new proof Kirby Right Back At Ya is canon in ages. The Kaboo actually acts as a fortress just like in the anime. Kaboo has never gotten lore outside of Right Back At Ya, so there's truly no reason for this to be the case if the anime isn't canon. And unlike other references which are just references, this has actual impact on the world and can't just be brushed off. The Kaboos were presumably built as rest stations for Star Warriors, with pedestals for warp stars. And speaking of warp stars, there's something I need to admit. I've been perpetuating incorrect lore about the warp star for a long time. The most well-known lore about the warp star is that it's the source of Kirby's power and essentially his heart. And since there's never been any lore outside the anime, I've just kind of overlooked the fact that warp stars clearly aren't exclusive to Kirby. And that's because they aren't. They weren't even in the anime. In the episode Air Ride in Style, Kaboo specifically says that other Star Warriors also have warp stars. And that's probably a big contributor to the misconception that they are a race. But we know by word that Meta Knight formed the Star Warrior Resistance, so what gives? Well, a video by Olu puts into perspective how stars are actually one of the building blocks of the entire Kirby universe, and warp stars are just a common variant of those. We see the Fountain of Dreams form a warp star and the Mage Sisters summon one, so other Star Warriors are probably just using already existing stars for ease of travel and combat, and maybe they have some kind of natural fate-triggered affinity for the stars, but for Kirby, we already know he's literally a Star Warrior. We can see it in his eyes, and Mass Attack proves that his heart is indeed a star, so Kirby is just a special case. And he's using his heart to act as a vehicle, as opposed to others which are just there. We also get a mostly hyperbolic line about how only someone who cares for Kirby and Kirby trusts can summon the warp star, which is clearly just here to put some power of friendship shenanigans in the show. But it is true in the games that it rarely is there on command and usually only appears when needed. So there probably is some sort of reaction to positive energy that makes warp stars activate. Furthermore, I've always seen the ending scene where Kirby eats the warp star as symbolic that Kirby no longer needs another to care for him. The entire anime is essentially a training arc, and by the end Kirby proves himself. We never even see the warp star again after this scene, so it's possible Kirby really did fuse with it, and now can manifest the warp star by his own power. Even the Star Rod scene actually makes sense now, beyond it just being, oh, it was in a dream sequence so anything can happen. Because if the Star Rod can create a warp star, why can't the warp star create a Star Rod? But beyond that, the Star Warriors are also said to have used the air ride machines before enemies stole them. But I think it's clear that air ride machines is really just a loose term based on their use, and there's no group of entities classified as air rides. The only reason the ones Nova made are a part of a sentient hive mind is because they were made from Zora's will. Nova obviously isn't the origin of any of these, as wheelies existed before. There is an appearance of Wheelie in the anime which is very strange. I think it's really just a shape-shifting monster that took the form of a wheelie and not that wheelies are all monsters, because we literally see the Cappies make a wheelie scooter for Kirby earlier in the episode. So clearly the Cappies are at least aware of wheelies and aren't at odds with them, before Nightmare showed up. Now onto the bosses. Starting with Nightmare, I believe this is the real Nightmare. If you look at his necklace, it has a crescent moon instead of his usual brooch. Parallel Nightmare also had this, and the parallels are made from negative feelings, so he likely wears this as a constant reminder to not lose as he did on the moon. But unfortunately, we can't be 100% sure about this, as Sectonia Clone also has a broken heart, when the original did not, so clones can also manifest images of their failures. I still think it's the real him, not only because of the whole "I am a dream, therefore I can always return" line, you know the quote by now. But also it calls him the King of Bad Dreams, which would be weird to use a title of authority for a clone. Also, King? Nightmare has never been called a king before from my knowledge, so it seems they're getting a little on the nose with the Master Crown connection now. Next we have 02. They're as in your face as possible that this one is a clone. You can only fight him after going into a computer, which in itself is like, what? And he makes tons of weird glitchy digital sounds. Now, either some ancients are still alive, or the form of 02 is one they've seen in the past, because by all means 02 should only exist after Dreamland 3, though this clone is noticeably missing the band-aid, the one thing that signifies that 02 is a successor in the same body. The real question though is who on earth is making a Matrix world in a computer and putting 02 in there? Maybe Nova just made this thing himself? Either way, it seems 02's essence is too hard to recreate compared to other clones. Next we have the Robo DDD, and let's be honest, there's no reason for this to exist, but it's in Road Trip, so I guess it's diegetic. Since it turns into a car, I have to assume DDD built this in order to cheat races or something, or maybe City Trial is also canon in some kind of game show made by DDD, and Nova's just corrupted it here. Finally, we have Marx. Just Marx. We see he's still terrorizing others in the cutscenes, so clearly Star Allies was a special case and he is still evil. He even is the last boss protecting Nova. Guess they still bond over world domination. Alright, it's finally time to talk about Nova. It's clear as day now that Nova was always evil. When Marx wished for control over Popstar, Nova went to destroy it. When Meta Knight asked for a test of strength, he sent someone who could destroy planets. And if everything that happens in Road Trip wasn't enough proof, in the Nova stage, he's casually just blowing up a random planet, which also makes me think his wish-granting abilities were greatly exaggerated. We never see him actually manipulate reality. He's only seeming to use tools that are already at his disposal. The most unexpected scene is when Nova sends an army of ant robots. We've seen drones in Nova before, and there's even these builders in the cutscenes, so why bugs, other than to just traumatize random children? There is another strange music choice. On the Nova stage, it can sometimes play Tyranza's theme, so perhaps Floralia and the bugs there are closer to the ancients than we realize. Crowned also plays here, but that's not all surprising. And finally, Leo is just based on Sakurai's star sign, so it's probably a self-insert and not currently a part of any lore, but that could always change later. There's probably an infinite number of things I could overanalyze in Air Riders, but I think that's good enough for one video. Please give us a name and more context on the hand trees, Sakurai. What the heck was that? This video was edited in majority by JMT Pixelmon. Please subscribe to him.
Thank you so much for having me on here again, Super Kirby. It was very fun to work on this video, alongside the fact that I learned something new. And it's the fact that Poison Mash exists. So yeah, thank you for watching. The culmination of Super Kirby and I's hard work, and I will see you all, and I'll talk to you later.